Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, The Morning Mist, Above and Beyond Schizophrenia. Today we are having a very special guest. This has been a long time in the making, and I've actually wanted to have her on here really a few weeks ago, but just kept putting that off, and we finally able to have her here. And this is my wonderful, beautiful wife, Alicia. And say hi to the people.
Hi, everyone.
So, one of the reasons why I want to have her here is, for one, I've known her years ago, and even when I was going through schizophrenia, she was someone that would be with my family, and she would see me in those desperate situations. And so having put my story out there of just the darkness that I went through, being admitted in the hospital, being diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic with delusions of grandeur, and how I used to starve myself for over a month at times until I was a skeleton of a thing. Paranoid, delusional, just totally lost. And you saw some of this, right? Is that all that true?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true, and it's been quite the journey that you've been on, and just being there to experience everything that you've gone through. And I think the hardest thing is for everyone around you when your loved one is going through a difficult time and you just seen them, but for the most part, there's not really a whole lot that you can really do besides just letting them know that you're there for them and you support them. But there are things where they're hearing voices and you can see them really struggling, see you really struggling and not be able to really do much than to just sit with you and just talk, which you want to kind of take away that pain and that suffering, and not be able to do that. That was really hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's what you say is 100% true. Going back to that time, though, when you came, because I remember the first time that you came by and see me like that, and we obviously were not in a relationship at that time, but what were some of your first thoughts? I don't know if you remember that day very well. I remember it, but what were some of your thoughts? I remember I was underneath the sheets in my room, and then I think you came and they opened the door and you said hi. Do you remember that time?
You know what? I do a little bit. I mean, some of it is a little vague, but it's been so long ago. But I do remember it's, coming in, and it's one of those things that you don't really know. I was really young, so you don't really understand it, fully what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, for me, it was just knowing that you were there and you were going through a difficult time. So, I didn't see that, diagnosed with schizophrenia, he's hearing voices. Yeah. I still saw you as a person, and it was just okay, how can I connect to you? What is it, to be able to kind of because I know you weren't really talking as much, you weren't very talkative at all, and it was just usually one word answers, and so I was okay, well, how can I connect with you? And I think one of the things that it was easy to connect with you was we both grew up in church, and so you had your Bible and your hymn book out, and I was just that annoying little girl was just going to the hymn books and was hey, I used to sing this in church, and oh, I know this Bible verse, and And then so I think that was the way that we had conversation, and yeah, and through music too. I don't know, do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. It was always it was good at first, but then when they, it's like I would hear you say stuff at me, like direct words at me and stuff like that, and then I was want to kick you out, like get out. You know what I mean? You remember those times, right?
Yeah, it was just like, oh, I thought we were having a good time. I was like, okay, out. Like, okay, I'll see you next time then.
Yeah, right. So yeah, that was an interest, and that's true because I be talking about trying to connect with people because you were so non-judgmental and just so bright and warm and inviting. I always looked forward to our kind of interactions, right? And I didn't always show it, but I was always happy when you came by. Mm-hmm. I was always happy, and I tried to hide it, and one of the things I talked about in one of my videos was actually for having that kind of attitude or mentality towards someone who is maybe paranoid and delusional and thinking that you're out to get them, because what that did for me was it challenged my thought process, right? Because I always thought you guys were the enemy. You're always trying to poison me, and you guys were witches and demons and all this stuff. So then there was this contradiction now. Why is it that you're so nice? I'm not, why is it that if you're out to kill me, then why this? Why that, right? So there's this conflict now, which it kind of was trying to balance things out a bit, right? So, which is a good thing, right? So being able to support people, to be open and non-judgmental and stuff, it does help, regardless if like sometimes when I think about it like that, but it does. So, no, that was that was pretty good. So, but were you ever afraid of me in any time of that during that process?
No, it was, I think because growing up, like my granddad, like my mom's dad, was, I don't know, my entire time back in Jamaica. I left when I was 14, and ever since, like, I knew him, like, was struggled with mental illness, and I think there was never an official diagnosis, but based on everything that he gone through, it was, like, definitely, schizophrenia. As I went through school, I kind of realized that's what it was, and definitely with, it was very paranoid and had delusions of grandeur. So sometimes, like, you would think that, someone's home was his, and that, everybody belongs to him. And, like, he would say, like, things that were obviously not true. And he wouldn't shower. He would wear the same clothes. He would be, talking to himself and stuff like that. And lots of people in our community was afraid of him. But for us as kids, like, he was our, he was my granddad, and it was like we still love him. So my mom, he lived by himself, but my mom would always cook, and we would bring him his food on Sundays. And he, like, even though sometimes he didn't really seem as if he was there, he was, like, present in reality, but, like, he really, like, he really was. Sometimes we're like, Papa, do you know who I am? And he was like, of course I know who you are. And then we challenge him, was like, well, who am I? And then, he would say my name, and then that he was there. And he was still very kind, right? So it was just kind of that, I guess that, there was, like, a contrast, really, because there were times where he just, he seems like he didn't really know where he was, disoriented, and he was dealing with those voices in his head. But then whenever we came around, like, we just saw a different version of him that people wouldn't normally see, like his humanity. He was just so kind. Like, we would have cashew trees and almond trees, and he would, like, cut them for us, and take, like, the little food out of it for us, and he would cook, and he would always give us food. So it was just very kind. So I think seeing you going through something similar, it was just like, I already had that earlier experience of my granddad struggling with the same thing, and with mental illness, and not being afraid of him, because just knowing that there's something that's happening to his, his mind, his body, his spirit. And but this just this humanity, like who he is, that he's still there, right? And you can sort of try in different ways to connect with him. And I think I took that same experience with you, because it's just that we just trying, like I said earlier, just to find ways that like how can I connect with you? It's just because I didn't feel that there was anything to be afraid of, really, because you didn't really give me, I think, even though sometimes you were a little bit abrupt. I know at times, but I think like I understood that wasn't you, right? Like that's not who you are. So it was easy to kind of separate that and just and just kind of connect from that level, from just human to human, right? So
yeah, no, that's actually led into a question that I was going to ask you later on, but since it came, I was going to ask you if there was anyone on your side of the family that actually had schizophrenia. But yeah, your grandfather has schizophrenia, and is there? You said your mother used to take care of him?
Yeah, like my mom, like her brother, and for us as kids, like I think his entire family was there.
Okay, so right now there is support for him there, because your mom is here as well. So there's support.
Yeah, there's still family. Obviously, it's not the same, because my mom used to kind of live in the same complex as he did, so always had that person, to cook him his meals. And he can cook, but just say, it was really hard recently. He wasn't feeling great.
Yeah.
And then just trying to connect with different family from, elsewhere outside of the community to kind of help, to help him out a little bit, to make sure that he's getting the help that he needs. So I think now it's a little bit more challenging, but I think it was, even back then, it was very challenging for a family, because it's like Jamaica is not a place where there's a lot of mental health resources. So, and because sometimes there can be superstition around mental illness as well. So my family did the best that they could, always trying to get him help. But sometimes he could be a little bit aggressive.
Yeah.
And he, a couple of times, he did hurt people, and that was hard, because we know that's not who he is. But it's just trying to get him to a hospital to get the care that he needs. And if he's not taking the medications, the treatment that's prescribed for him, and then he'll go in for a short period of time, then he comes out, then kind of relapse again, because he doesn't want to, he's very strong-headed too, so it's hard to kind of get him to take his medications and stuff. So that was a really hard period of time, but thankfully he has been fairly stable and not really, hurting people, and so that's been good.
Okay. Okay. So, given that situation there, and given what I went through, and how you were there, and my mother and my sisters and so forth, how important, and we talked a little bit about this earlier, but how important do you see the need for support for someone going through mental illness, such as schizophrenia, or things of that nature? How impactful is that, do you think?
Oh my goodness, I think, not necessarily just for someone dealing with mental illness, but I think any chronic type of illness or diseases that someone's dealing with, over time, it becomes, it's like you're trying to climb, Everest. It's really hard, right? And you can start out, you being positive, but over time, you're just getting dumped on, and it just seems like it's one battle after another, and you really need the support of your friends and your family, because sometimes when you're having a time where you're not able to lift yourself up, you need all those hands, those hands of positive energy and positive vibes to kind of help hold you up, right? So it's I think it's um, yeah, like I think it's absolutely important and necessary, and I do think I'm sure, like I think there are research who shows that people who actually have support with different challenges that they're going through, like dealing with diseases or anything, people to kind of help them to be hopeful, right? To kind of help to advocate for them, because sometimes, especially when you're going through psychosis or you're going kind of difficult challenges where you're not able to advocate for yourself. Like you need your loved one to be able to, to be able to be that voice for you to kind of bring your concerns forward. And
Yes.
so it's kind of, I don't know, like it breaks my heart, like knowing that there are people who, sometimes fall through the cracks of our system, our healthcare system, because they just maybe because mental health still, there's resources that are out there for sure, but there still need to be more. There's more that can be done to kind of really support people who are dealing with mental illness for sure. So like I do think when you have like your family that can be there to advocate for you, to kind of provide that unconditional love to not, when you're having those moments where you're being difficult or you're not progressing, the way that they might expect you to, or they're to kind of just to be able to step back and just realize that that's not you, the essence of who you are is still there, but that person who is hearing the voices who might be, calling you names or being aggressive, like that's not who you are, and to kind of still see your humanity, to kind of and treat you with dignity and integrity at the same time, because sometimes it can be difficult for caregivers, right, when their loved one is kind of dealing with that and become frustrated and kind of thinking that whatever you're presenting and how you're, maybe the lack of communication, they're talking to you and you're not responding, or, it might seem like you might have an outburst and they might take it personally as if you're attacking them. And sometimes that might be the case, but to kind of really know that it's not you that's there, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's, absolutely, to answer your question, absolutely. Like you need your friends and your family to just really be there to kind of see you as a person, and to not to not really judge you, because really any of us can be going through that at any point in life, right? It doesn't, I think, mental illness or chronic diseases or whatever, it does not, it doesn't discriminate, right? So it's just at any point in time, any of us can be going through that. So we definitely have to be empathetic and to have compassion towards other people.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that support for me was invaluable, because I wasn't eating, I wasn't, the way I was, I'd have died on the street or something, So, and my mom, she fought for me in the hospitals, and, so, it's when you're a stranger to somebody, they may not have the same feeling, obviously they don't, to you as like your family, people that know you, that grew up with you. So, it's easy for a healthcare professional to kind of just put some label on you, recommend certain treatments or whatever the heck it is. The doctors wanted to put me in Alberta Hospital, which is a long-term situation. If it wasn't for my mother, who said no, I'd rather have him at home where I can, we can visit and so forth. And if he's back in the hospital, then at least she can still visit. But as opposed to go in a far away place where who knows what they'll be doing to me. But it was easy for a doctor to recommend that because he has no ties to me personally outside of that, right? So it's a bit more concerning for the parent or the family who have those kind of concerns of what's going to happen to you. You know what I mean? I can't be there as often as I'm here to make sure that his needs are being met, that he's being respected. Right, so you definitely need people to advocate for you on that, in those kind of situations, if they have a better alternative, or something to say about it. So, you mentioned this in your answer previous, just prior to this, um, which is I found that was kind of interesting because again you touched on something that I was going to ask you.
Oh.
And
I guess you can share with your audience. It's just that I don't even know the questions.
She
so
doesn't know the questions actually.
So
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
So I'm like, what is he going to ask me here?
Yeah. And it's about hope. The power of hope. Because you mentioned about being hopeful and so forth. So, how important, how impactful is having hope? Not because I talk to some people online who have either going through a mental illness themselves or have a family member that's going through it, and for both, it's a dark time. It's obviously a trying time, a really dark period for the person going through it, but also for the family members, the support. It's also a trying period as well. And one thing I try to light up, is the concept of hope and the power of hope. And but I want your kind of thoughts on this. How important do you think this is, and in your own life, how important has that been? Because you've also obviously had your own struggles, and I think we all do in one way or another. But what's your thoughts on that?
Oh my goodness. I think, it's something that's like, wow, that's been like a big part of, like my journey, like dealing with chronic pain, going from, feeling like I've arrived in a certain sense, like you're young, you go through your struggles, and then finally, you go through school, you have your degree, and you're like, okay, yes, life is going in a direction that you envision, right? You have these goals and you feel like you're walking towards it, and then all of a sudden it was just like, life just threw something at you, and it was just, and I think, I guess I'll give a little bit of a backstory, and it just, like I went through a period of hopelessness, like really, and like I just felt powerless, and I was like, well, how could this happen? I'm eating right, I'm exercising, I'm doing all the things that I'm supposed to be doing. But then here I am dealing with a chronic illness, and they're telling me you're not going to be able to work as a nurse again or something like that. And just like, wow, like, and I don't like to say why me, but it's just like, what did I do to deserve this,
Heard that one before. I've been there. That's my story right there.
Yeah, it's just like, not again, it's just like you feel like you've had a life filled with adversities, and it's just, there is like another one in your mid-20s, and it's just, and so, but after a short period of time where I'm just feeling sorry for myself, and it was just, I don't know, I just felt sick and tired of feeling sorry for myself, so I just needed, and I felt too, I guess, I think of hope as a light, and they always talk about to always see that light at the end of the tunnel, and I think within it wasn't necessarily shining brightly, but there was still that flicker of light was there. And as long as that was still there, it was kind of like, okay, just think about, there's a book that I'm reading right now, and it talks about what is your highest potential right now. And I think I never really said it using that exact phrasing, but it was at that moment, words like, what is my purpose? Like, who am I? And I felt that I was going through an existential crisis, really, because now I'm just like, well, if I can't do what I went to school to do, and I think a part of the struggle was that it was really tied to my identity. It was kind of like part of who I am, and now that I'm not able to do it, then it's like, who is Alicia? What is my purpose? And that was really hard. And so I think when I had to really change my mindset, into kind of adopting, like having a little bit more faith and having that belief. And I think that goes hand in hand with hope. Faith and hope, and then it was just finding something that I that I like to do, and that was through volunteering. And I started volunteering for chronic pain program, and it was that that gave me some hope, and it was just because it was something to look forward to. I know that once a week for 6 weeks I'm going to be going to this program, and I started doing little things, and then from there and I think part of that too was just really training my mind and really trying to adopt a new mindset, where it's just rather than focusing on everything that was going so badly, was just kind of shifting to what is it that's good in my life right now. What is, like, I'm still breathing. I'm still able to have like a warm, loving home. I had family who was very helpful and supportive, and so I think all those things kind of still made me be hopeful, and just that, like, I'm still, feeling that I'm still young and there's so much to accomplish. So I started finding inspiration. You know what I mean? Like, I thought, look at your journey and what you went through, and I started looking at, Stephen Hawking, and then there's this, and I think that was just, like, amazing that what he went through, and just to still thinking that he, just to still have that hope and that faith that, he can still impart wisdom to this world. He can still, there was something that he felt, he had a message out there that he wanted to share, and he didn't let what happened to him kind of, become his identity and, be his destiny. But he still kind of got up, and he worked really hard, and he did what he had to do to kind of find his purpose, in his life. So I think hope it's invaluable. I think it's something that, I don't know, can we even live without it as human beings? Like, I think even on some levels we might not recognize it, but I do think it's something that we do use a lot, but maybe we don't really, say that's hope or that's faith, because sometimes it can be seem more like a religious, people who are, religious use those types of words, but
no, that's 100% correct, actually. It's talking about Stephen Hawking is kind of, when he talked about, you mentioned that him not wanting that condition to be his identity or something like that. That's that word identity. It's really interesting, actually, because a lot of times for people who are struggling with chronic illnesses, and whether it's physical or it's mental, there comes a point where our identity seems to get lost or confused with that of the illness, right? And sometimes we begin to take on the identity of the very thing that we don't want to be associated with. Right? And have you experienced this? And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think with first it was interesting.
Oh, sorry. One second. I didn't neglect to mention that my wonderful wife here was a nurse, so she brought that up. So she has a background in nursing, and not mental health capacity, but you've been around some of these scenarios, and every patient come in there obviously do have some kind of mental. There's always mental health is more than just psychosis. Is you know what I mean? Like, it's just in whatever it is, whether it's addictions or all the other situations that the mental your mental health is impacted. But go ahead.
No,
I want to just actually acknowledge that you are a nurse, or at least your background wasn't being a nurse. So
like, I think I think the idea of there is the diagnosis when someone's actually dealing with those symptoms of psychosis, or maybe diagnosed with some other forms of mental illness. But I think there's also I think we all have the basic questions that that's asked when you go into a hospital is, what is your name? Like, do you know what time it is? Do you know the date? Or, do you know where you are?
Yeah.
And those are things to kind of really to discern whether, you are, how oriented you are to, to the present, to reality.
Yeah.
So I think we can all work on our mental health.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
not if, it's just like, hey, you're diagnosed with mental illness, so you need to work on your mental health. I think it's something that we all need to, right? To, as part of that mind, body, spirit
Yeah.
kind of connection.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I guess you don't want to get sucked into that mindset of losing yourself to the identity of the illness, right? Because the more you struggle with something, the more it becomes you, or it tries to become you, or make you become it, however it works, right? You start to identify yourself with it, right? And then it just stays with you, and that's I did a video, and the video was I forgot what it's called, but it was exactly about that, to be able to identify yourself properly, right? Because when I was struggling against schizophrenia, I had to recognize that schizophrenia wasn't mine. So it was not something I wanted. So it was never my schizophrenia. And I heard a lot of people refer to it as this, and then the doctor would say, you're schizophrenic, or stuff like that. And I was like, and I was aware enough to recognize that this isn't right, man. And I guess some of the paranoia as well in me was almost just also making me think that it was trying to get me to confess that this was me, right? So I rejected it every time. And fortunately, that actually worked in my favor, because I never became a schizophrenic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's always that. It's always that, and then there was me.
Yeah.
So it helped in separating myself from it, right? And it's a simple thing, but it's so very important. And I think it's really a key element, I think, in actually overcoming these kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember, first year of nursing that we had to do a course, and that was the one before we go into our long-term care clinical placement. And I remember my instructor at the time, I remember her last name, but like her first name was Norma, and she was like a really lovely instructor. And I remember she kind of talked about, I don't know if it had phrased in the textbook, like when you're caring for diabetic patients or something along those lines, or maybe someone just mentioned diabetic. And she kind of instructed us that, like that's not a diabetic patient. This is a person who is being diagnosed with diabetes, because the disease is not who that person is. And so that was like the first time where I kind of like really worked on, like, understood it a little bit better, and just work on not like using that phrasing. But like I think there's also that, those personal pronouns, whereas like, okay, my pain, or like, my disease, or whatever. Whatever that is, my delusions. It's just, and so I do think it does play a part, and maybe some people can separate it. But I do find for myself, like, dealing with complex regional pain, it's really, like when you kind of say it like my pain, it just really, like you said, it's almost something that's, it's very personalized, and it's like, okay, this is mine, like it belongs to me. And but it's not something that I wanted, but I thought, but the part of it that really gets caught up with the identity, like I found and perhaps maybe that was a big part of the struggle, was not necessarily just dealing with the disease itself and the pain, but there was that struggle of, okay, like part of my identity was I'm a nurse. I was doing lots of, like, I love high intensity workout, my Insanity, my P90X. And then I'm not able to do that, because then I would go into to a flare up. You know, I was like hanging out with friends, like very, very social. I was traveling the world and doing all those things. And then to me, it was just, okay, well, if I can't do any of those things that I thought was a part of who I am, so then who am I now? Because then it just feels that I'm not left with anything. I can't do the things that I want, and this is who I am. And I think that's the dangerous part, like when we, I guess, when I say, you know, I'm a nurse or I am this, but who am I really?
Yeah.
You know, because it's just, we know that life is constantly changing and we're evolving, and you know, at any moment, if we don't have those particular roles, then how do we move forward? And I think that was a big challenge dealing with that. I don't know, I guess I call it a role identity crisis. And you know, then all of a sudden I didn't have that confidence, I didn't have that self-esteem, and you know, I was walking around with a sore on my hand. I have a scar from a car accident that I was in, and that was kind of where that kind of came from, you know, with the pain, like nerve pain that developed later on. And so that was a part of the struggle to kind of really separate. It's just that I am more than this pain that's happening. I am, you know, just maybe I'm not able to nurse right now, but there is so much more that I can do. There's so much more that I can be to other people. You know, I can be a better sister. I can be a better, I mean, I guess better wife now. Or, you know, there's so many things that we can do. So I started volunteering, and that kind of gave me, like I said earlier, a purpose, and I was able to help other people. So sometimes when we're not necessarily focusing on our own struggles and we're able to kind of, you know, go into a volunteer capacity and help other people, then it really minimizes, you know, the pain and suffering that we feel. And also too, it's just that sometimes people don't realize that because they're going through a particular hardship in their lives, it's just that you can still be helpful towards other people. There's always something that you can do to help other people. So it just kind of finds just, what is it that I'm good at? You know, maybe you're a good listener, and then you can just start focusing on that. Or, you know, maybe you're good with music, so maybe make some music and you can share that with other people, and then that can help your own healing at the same time.
Yeah, no, that's that is true, and you've been able to overcome your own, at least the struggles in your own life. Like you said, you were been nursing, and then you developed this chronic illness, and but went through a period of despair and hopelessness, but started to look beyond the circumstance and to see hope and to find a light, and you've made pretty good recovery in comparison to a lot of people who have been struggling with the same thing. But I guess the mindset you've adopted have allowed you to propel yourself forward in a way that's probably a mystery to many.
Yeah.
You know, it was kind of like myself going through schizophrenia, and the fact that I got through it, and much like you, overcome your situation as well.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's, you know, people might say, well, that doesn't have anything to do with it, and because positivity doesn't work. And you know what, it's like, for me, I think that's what's made like the biggest difference is to, and sometimes it's a daily struggle. Like I cry, I scream out, and you know, like asking, I think it was a couple months, I was like asking, you know, I'm like, what is it that God said, you know, Jesus said when he was on the cross again, like, you know, it's like, you know, Lord, why hast thou forsaken me? And because sometimes like it gets rough, right? And you have those moments when you just cry out, but you know, and the reality of it is just that I just see it as, you know, stumbling blocks or stepping stones, and you know, and so it's just I have that moment, and I just really allow myself to feel, and you know, those emotions, and then I just comfort, and you're there to comfort me too, and
Mm-hmm.
and to kind of give me those words of wisdom that I need to kind of just keep moving forward. So it's never, but I do think it's just that it makes a difference when we can be the mindset that we adopt each day. Because if I get up, I remember I used to get up out of bed, and it was the first thing I wake, as I woke up, and it would be, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. Oh, this sucks. And it would just be pure negativity, just complaining. And that really shaped my day.
Mm-hmm.
But when you start to kind of like, okay, I'm going to be intentional about, my mindset when I wake up. And with that practice, it just, like, okay, when I wake up, and I adopted a saying that, today is a good day to have a good day. And then so I wake up, and as soon as I had a thought I wanted to whine and complain about how much sleep I didn't get, and how much pain I'm in, and it was just like, that light bulb would kind of be going off. It's like, okay, today is a good day to have a good day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna get up, and okay, I'm gonna brush my teeth, wash my face, and I'm gonna sit at the kitchen counter. I'm gonna have breakfast. And so I created goals for myself, throughout the day, to kind of something to do, so I pace myself, and I'm not lying in bed all day, because that really affects the mindset as well. So it makes a big difference. And I think that's one of the things that where I had the greatest success, because with medications, after a while I just kept on getting sick, and I tried so many of them, and I would get sick after. I just wouldn't feel great, and I remember one of my doctors just say, "You know what? You're better off not taking medication." So, and that's all I had was to be hopeful, kind of, to believe that I am better, that I'm going to get better, and I'm going to find my purpose, and yeah. So I just had to kind of, and those were, so it was just kind of, like I said, finding inspiration. We're watching anime, where I don't know if any of you guys on this channel are a big anime fan, but we totally are, and totally nerds, and one of the ones that I love to watch.
Nerd. I'm anime though. That's cool. That's cool people stuff.
And I really love to watch Naruto, and I think because there is so much I think I can relate to. I love stories where people are, go through struggle, and then different struggles, and they've overcome them. And I think that kind of gives me different, it's a level of motivation. It's just like, okay, like I can do this. I can do this too, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it was one of the ones. So just finding inspiration, writing quotes, and
watch Hajime no Ippo.
Oh yeah.
Fighting Spirit.
Yeah, the Fighting Spirit.
With Kenichi.
Yeah.
All those ones are.
Yeah.
It's like the similar themes.
Yeah.
Right? Just these young kids have, going through adversity, and after adversity, and persevering, and just having to find that hope, and that positivity, that light.
Yeah, because it's just, I think when you're healthy and then life knocks you down, and it's not something where it's just temporary. It just seems that it's long term, and it's going, not months after months, years, year after year, and it becomes really hard, right? So sometimes it's just like, just like when you're lifting weights, and you have that consistency that develop, but you have to really build that muscle. And I think it's the same thing when it comes to training the mind, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And where it's not, I remember you all used to say, it's like, well, you have to take it from, can't just be in your head like something that you're memorizing, but it has to go from here, and it has to kind of like come down into your heart, right? Because it's easy when things are going well to be, anybody can be really hopeful, but really the test comes when when you have a setback.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you respond in those moments? And I think that's why you practice being more positive. That's why you do that meditation. That's why you do that yoga. Like anything to kind of really help strengthen your spirit, because the challenge doesn't come when things are good, but it actually comes when you're in the moment of a setback, and it's just like, how are you going to respond, to that setback? So that's why you kind of practice those things. And
Yeah, no, 100%. I did want to get this question before we log off here, but I was talking to a friend on here, and helping him through his own diagnosis with schizophrenia, and he actually managed to went from really isolating and struggling to just reconnecting with his friends and his family and just getting out there and living life. So that was pretty good to see. And I asked him if he wanted to ask a question that he wanted me to ask you for this interview. And the question was, just for me, for you knowing what I've been through, and you've been there, you've seen some of these things. What's it like being in a relationship or being married to someone who, I think is exactly what he said, was what's it like being married to someone who schizophrenia has put through the ringer?
I think from, where you were to where you are right now, it's, and how you've been for like the last, I don't know, like
it's a long time,
a long time, right? And I guess it's hard for people to kind of really to see that, right? Because it's only 1% of people with schizophrenia that actually recovers, and so what we see out there is different from, like, I guess, like what you're able to do, to drive, to work, to go to school, and everything that you have accomplished. So I don't see you any different from anybody else is out there. It's not like, okay, you're, this is Paul who's had schizophrenia, it's schizophrenic Paul, and like, no, like, you're not different from, from any other guy out there. Really, I mean, you are, but when we think about just men in general, like, I don't think there is anything that's different in that sense. So, and I think it's easy to to love someone who you've seen as a world that we live in, we're so afraid to show each other our vulnerabilities, right? Like, we want to be, present our best selves when we're meeting a partner that we want to spend our lives with, right? And sometimes so we walk around with all these facades and these masks that we put on, and then oftentimes you hear people like, well, this is not the person that I used to know, and because we have all these masks on, right? And then eventually, as time goes on, like, you start to shed those masks, and the real you start to kind of come out, right? And then you feel like you don't really know that person. So I think it's just, like, I love you, not big, not in spite of that schizophrenia, but I think it's just, because of that experience that you went through, and I think that made you, a more compassionate person, like more loving. You can really connect to people on a different level, and I think that you have a brilliant mind, and sometimes a little bit too brilliant, drives me crazy, but no, like, I think that you do, and like, you're just I always tell you that one of the things I love about you is just your humility and just how generous you are, and you always give people the benefit of the doubt, and I think not too many people are like that. You're just so forgiving, and so it's just like, it's just so easy to to love you. And I think also too, you've seen my vulnerability, and who else do you to become, like, we're best friends. We've been best friends for for so long, and I think who else do you love than someone who have kind of seen you at your worst, and to still be able to want to spend the rest of forever with you. That's the best person to to be with, because that doesn't matter what happens, whatever arises later on, we always know that we'll be there for each other always. So
100%. I feel the same. There you go again, bringing up something that I pretty much wanted to touch on again. Jeez. Well, it kind of leads into this, but are you concerned of me kind of regressing into schizophrenia again, because I'm not on medications, and there's this obviously if you've it's almost like an addiction, I guess they say, like once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic, so if you've been through it and then you recovered, you obviously don't want to may not want to touch a drink again because it might fall off the bandwagon or something. That's the wagon, not the bandwagon, but you know what I mean? So are you concerned that I'm going to regress back to that?
No, I don't think it's something that I really can, consider. It's just like, okay, like I'm really worried about Paul. Like, how is he getting along with his coworkers? Like, how is he when he's driving? Or maybe he wants to have a glass of wine. Like, honey, you can't, you shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
No, I guess I'm one of those people where I think it's just, in life, it's just everything in moderation. And I think you have been so consistent, for so long, and so you don't. Yeah, to me, like you don't show any signs, and I think it's one of those things where it's like with anyone. We do say, for example, someone who gone through the blues, or you feel really sad, or you might have some form of depression. For myself, it's just I see it as we all need to do the things that is going to help our mental health. So it's just that, to get the right eating, getting the right amount of exercise, and eating a proper meal. Like making sure you're getting whole foods, and you're eating your variety of fruits and your vegetables, and doing all those things that gonna reducing stressors in your life. So I think all those things is going to contribute to towards our mental health. So I don't think about it in like, okay, you're going to be diagnosed with, go back into like a relapse. No, like I don't think about that. But I think as a couple, we do work on, reducing stressors, and to make sure that we are on the same page by communicating and just stating, like when my needs are not being met, and you stating when your needs are not being met, and kind of, like we might have like a little squabbles, but we just resolve them, with like don't let the sun go down on your wrath kind of thing.
We're pretty good at that.
Yeah, so we just kind of deal with those things. So I think more than anything, it's just kind of like, okay, like as a couple, how do we work on our mental health? Because maybe my mental health could be challenged if I'm not dealing with things in my own personal life, as like we have like our couple life, but there's also those individual stressors that I might have dealing with my own chronic illness and all those different things. So from that perspective, I look at it collectively as a husband and wife, like working on our mental health and just making sure that we're doing the things that we need to do to continue to to be fully functioning, to kind of have a loving, caring home, and to grow, to grow in love, and trust and honesty with each other. So, no, I'm not worried at all.
Okay, that's good to hear.
Well, you know that.
Yeah, I know, but still good to hear. So, it's actually, pretty interesting, just how the fact that me and you got together, in a relationship, just considering that from where I was and you seeing all that, and you still, like some people would probably find it weird or odd that, that you would even be romantically interested in me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To I don't know if they would, but maybe some people would. But what advice would you have for people maybe in similar situations, whether it's a guy or girl who may be going through schizophrenia or some kind of chronic illness or whatever it is, and maybe interested in somebody who may not be going through something the same as them or whatnot. you know, like, can I put it like this? What made you even consider being romantically involved with me?
Wow. Guess it's one of those things, like I said, like we've always been like really great friends, and I think it's not one of those things where I thought about before, but I think it's just way sometimes life just kind of sends you in that direction, and everything is like really flowing, and and I don't know, like I see the way that you looked at me, and
obvious.
Yeah, and just the conversation, and the conversation that we have, I see the type of person that you are, and it's just it became, why not? And I think you're so, earlier I said you're not really different from men in that general sense, but really, like, I think you have the same values that I hold dear and true to my heart, and I think those are things that I felt is missing in our world today. Like, it's such a relationships are it's so different, and it's just something that I cannot that doesn't resonate with me. But I think when we talk, and just seeing the conversations that we have, and just how I feel just being around you, and it's just like, well, it's like, why not? And just one of those things is just when you meet someone whom your soul loves, then it's just that's the person whom to be with. Like, I don't have that questioning, okay, does he like me, does he not like me? There's no ambiguity that's there. It's just like I know how you feel. We talk about like our goals that we want, and I think in like with people like out there in previous experiences, you're not supposed to share that you want to get married, or you want to have kids, and it's supposed to be it's like that's not something that you're supposed to talk about so soon.
Dating,
when you're dating, and people it's just so non-committal, right? But I just think it's just that we just connect, and so it's just, I don't know, it's like this water just flows, and and in that direction. And I think I think the biggest thing is just like your character, like who who you are. And I know sometimes he might seem a little serious, but he's actually a big softie. So
easy. Tell my weakness. No, that's cool. I guess like I said, you've always treated me just with respect and love and passion, and just like my family, my mother and my sisters, and it challenged me. It challenged me. It challenged my perception, and it challenged just the way I looked. I was looking at everything, and I tried to, I guess by that challenging me, I had to challenge myself, and try to respond, not in a way where I felt like sometimes the paranoia and the delusions would make me want to react, but I had to kind of be a way that was also respectful, and was also, I always try to be in a lot of way, like a good person, I guess, right? Like, despite what I was going through, sometimes it was hard to be what you want to be, but I think just having you and everybody else just the way that they were kind of made it easier for me. So that's something that I think everyone could benefit from, I guess, like that kind of mentality. just to the compassion,
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
understanding, and to have that hope and that faith. And, for that guy or girl in that situation that's, maybe have that crush or something or
Yeah.
want to, it's just, like for me, like I said, I always enjoyed when she came by, but I never really considered a relationship during that time when I was going through some of that stuff and you were visiting, period of time. But, uh, I just kept showing you kindness. And for, except when I kicked you out of my room and stuff like that, till you get out. But, I always try to be accepting and try to just put my best self forward as much as I could. And, um, and, it reached you. So, we got married on January 9th of this year. So that's was pretty incredible. And, we're happy and we're good. And we love each other. And we're in this together. We're walking together, and we'll just keep persevering through whatever comes. And there's no one else uh, that's got me more than she does. So I'm happy to introduce her to everyone. This is it's my wife, my wonderful, lovely wife, Alicia, and thank you for doing this with me. And who knows? Maybe we'll have another another.
Yeah, no, it's been yeah, it's been a pleasure, and I think I don't know if you want me to give advice if someone you've a crush on someone, and I think the biggest advice is to really just be yourself, and which is one of the hard take it from someone who is just have a hard time, I've had such a hard time being myself and just really learning how to be comfortable in my own skin, like in my 30s. So it's just one of those things where just be yourself and be the best person that you can be. And I think if you can do that, then someone who truly loves and care about you is they're gonna feel that energy, and they're gonna connect with it, because and just
respond,
yeah, they're definitely gonna respond to that. But if someone is going to not, if you have all the the makings of a great guy, you're kind, and you're loving, you're compassionate, and you have all those fundamentals, and someone is not going to choose you because you've been diagnosed with schizophrenia, then I think that's person's loss and not yours. So it's just, I just think it's not worth wasting your time there. But it's just important to just wait and find that person who your soul is gonna love, and that who you're gonna want to be with, and you don't have to be worried that they're gonna leave you because you have they're worried about that you're gonna go into a relapse or anything like that. So that would be my advice, is to just learn to love the skin that you're in, and just to know that going through schizophrenia or any type of chronic disease is not your identity. It doesn't define who you are. And perhaps that happened to kind of give you a platform to really kind of share your story with someone, to kind of help lift them up. And I just love that you're doing this channel to just kind of really give people hope, because sometimes like our healthcare system can really lack hope, right? It's just that we're quick to diagnose everything else, but there is something that it really misses and that it cannot really reach, and it's just that it's the level of our spirit, right? It doesn't really get there, and it's through having hope and having faith and really believing, and maybe perhaps it's something that science cannot test at this point. Maybe some point in the future they'll be able to have like a test for it, but for right now we do know that that's a part of our being human, is that we respond to that, right? We're more than just this body, and there is whatever you believe in, or you don't believe in anything. And I don't think you really need to believe in a God to kind of you talk about there's the law of this world, and I think any of us can tap into that. So just believe in who you are and love yourself, and I think everything else will take care of itself.
Yes, and I agree. All right, so, all right, thank you again for stopping by and doing this with me.
Yeah,
and
my pleasure.
Yeah. All right, everybody. See you next time.
Bye.